Hello, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the summit so far. A very warm welcome to this exclusive mega panel discussion on the topic, Future of Work is Happening Now. The unprecedented outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic entirely transformed the conventional work paradigm. Businesses all over the world have a once-in-a-life possibility to rethink the workplaces, workflows, management, and employee strategies. It is imperative for the organizations to think that large-scale transitions are happening at the workplaces that are significant for attaining success in the future of work. Some of the major trends catalyzed by the pandemic are an increase in hybrid and remote working, organizational redesign for resilience, increased use of data analytics and collection, enhanced focus on continuous learning and development, focus on physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and financial health of employees, customized performance monitoring instead of employee monitoring, and more. With the acceleration in the changes in the way we work, HR leaders need to adapt quickly and respond fast to the changing demands of the business and employees. In this panel discussion, we will hear the thoughts of leading CHROs on the future of work and how HR leaders can design the future of work in a manner which is a win-win for both employers and employees. And with great pleasure, I would now like to invite and introduce our esteemed panelists for this session. First up, we have with us Dominic Keogh-Peters, founder and managing partner, Change Tribe Middle East. Dominic has led the people agenda during periods of significant organizational change, including HR transformation, business transformation, e-commerce development, new market openings, mergers and acquisitions, business startup, large-scale headcount growth, and nationalization. His HR leadership experience has been gained in high-growth multinational companies alongside some of the world's leading brands. Dominic is a chartered fellow of the CIPD and a mentor for HR directors for the UK CIPD. He is a lecturer at the Dubai PwC Academy on CIPD programs and is a keynote conference speaker focusing on organizational transformation, HR strategy, and the future of work. Next up, we have with us Nisha Varma, Chief Human Capital Officer, Apparel Group. Nisha is an HR professional with experience of global HR business partnering, digital HR, culture building, leading COEs in corporate HR in large engineering, IT, retail, advanced textiles, and telecom companies in India, the US, EMEA, with an employee strength of 15,000 plus. Her specialties include global HR practices, OD and change management, digital HR practices, talent management, early career programs, diversity and inclusion, workforce planning, employee engagement, leadership development, talent reviews and assessment centers, coaching and mentoring, performance management, capability building, rewards and recognition, TUBE, and M&A. Next up, we have with us Vinod Nair, Chief HR Operations Officer, Emirates NBD. Vinod has 23 plus years of experience extending thought leadership and a consultative approach across the HR ecosystem to deliver value-added services, entailing work exposure across diverse industries and geographically dispersed business units. He leverages inherent HR consulting skills for analyzing current HR programs and recommending appropriate solutions, ensuring HR programs and services are in compliance with established regulations and policies. He extends a unique blend of HR expertise along with business acumen that encompasses finance and auditing and the needed skills to implement best practices for organizations that fall under the public and private sector. And last but not the least, this session will be moderated by Varun Malik, Managing Director, Consolidan. Varun is a member of the founding team at Consolidan and the curator of Connected Insights. Previously, he has set up and managed operations consulting practices for large, mid-sized, and small consulting firms, including at PwC, Protiviti, and Encreate. He also set up and managed a consulting team at Protiviti, a global risk management and internal audit firm. Varun managed operations consulting projects at Encreate Consulting and startup consulting firm in Dubai. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. I'm sure our audience will learn a lot from the insights you would share today. And now, without any further delay, let me invite Varun to take over and start this exciting discussion. Over to you, Varun.
Thank you so much, Yasmin, and really looking forward to this discussion. Looking forward to learn as well as understand from three really accomplished HR practitioners how the future of work is changing and to some extent is already happening and is here and now. So there have been quite a few mega trends that Yasmin talked about. a sudden acceleration of changes because of course, COVID and the lockdowns it caused. HR leaders, I can understand, needed to adapt very, very quickly to these changes because most of these changes affected, the biggest effect of these changes was on people. But there were already, if you even leave aside COVID, there were a lot of mega trends that were already affecting the workplace, and COVID has only accelerated those changes. We're almost entering into a new civilization of work. The gig economy has had a massive impact on the kind of talent that HR leaders can bring to their organizations. Decentralized organizations are being set up to take further causes that are very relevant to the 21st century. Gen Z has joined the workforce, and they are a very, very different species when it comes to work, at least in my opinion, because they've been born digital, which is very different from many of us. And all of these changes has, of course, brought the future of work to us. We're going to be covering 5 main topics of discussion with the panel today. We're going to start by talking about how, because of the acceleration of these changes, how HR needs to change their traditional planning and sourcing strategies. So that's going to be the first topic of discussion. Then we're going to move on to a topic that I'm very passionate about, and I'm sure the panelists would love to add on there as well, around offloading manual and static work due to digitalization and creating more meaningful roles for the entire workforce, for everyone in the organization. We're going to move on to another very interesting topic around improving employee experience, and then designing a more agile organization. And then we're going to round it up with the future of HR departments. So some very, very relevant, very topical discussion points. And I think this is going to be a power-packed discussion. Let me start with my first topic, and I'll bring Dominic in if that's all right. Dominic, there's a huge change in the way organizations have started, planning as well as sourcing talent over the last few years because of some of these changes that we've talked about. Remote working, global expansion, employment regulations changing in various countries, allowing for a lot more flexibility, a lot more creativity for HR leaders. So the first question is around, how do you think HR departments have changed talent and sourcing strategies, and what else can they do to improve over the next few years?
Okay, so there's 2 points around that. The first one is, if we look at what you would call traditionally strategic manpower planning, that's the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time. What's changing around that is the traditional models don't work as well because the world is changing so quickly outside. And secondly, you've got so many things being automated. So we know that any job that's dirty, the 3 Ds, dirty, dull, or dangerous, is probably going to disappear over the next few years. So you've got to be working alongside your company, looking at the roles, understanding what could be done around automation. And then also, we know with globalization and technology that many jobs can be done, not all of them, but from different places around the world. So it's having core workers, and then around the periphery, different ways of doing it, whatever you want to call it, the gig economy, or having part-time, whatever it is, you've got to be working alongside the business to look at that structure. But I think now more than at any other time, people are actually beginning to understand that good talent self-selects. And the internet is where people go to find out about you. So your brand now is more powerful than ever before. So this is where a good HR director needs to be thinking like a marketeer. So when I say that is, who are these potential employees, or let's call them customers, that we will bring in the future? Why would they want to come and work for us? And when I'm talking about brand, I'm talking about the environment that we create in the organization. So there's that, there was the joke that was on LinkedIn a while ago where someone wrote, I'm going to join Google just for a week and then leave, just so I can write ex-Google in my title. That's the power of a brand now. So we've got to be thinking, why would talent want to come and self-select and choose us? So there needs to be not a disconnect between the brand that you're showing externally, whether online, your EVP, but the culture that you're creating by putting together complementary bundles of practices, how you do things around here, you know, whether it's a great learning environment. I mean, if you see some of the biggest companies now, they're becoming like kind of quasi colleges. So let me give an example. Google have a campus, Microsoft have a campus. They're saying, come and work with us and you're going to learn and grow and your brand will be even bigger. This is where it's not just about what we need and the skills we're going to need and when we need. That's very traditional HR done well, but it's about saying, how do we attract that talent to come on board and join us? Because talent these days, you don't need to call your friend and say, what's it like working at Microsoft now? It's all over the internet, on Glassdoor, on Indeed, on LinkedIn, what people write about you. So it's how you're crafting that so people are saying the right things about you. You're creating an environment that not only attracts, but engages and retains talent. That's for me where the future of HR, good resourcing and sourcing is.
Very well, makes a lot of sense. So HR taking strategies from marketing to
learn from, we've got all these amazing smart people around the organization doing smart stuff with our customers. Learn from them and look at their tactics and strategies so we do the same.
Absolutely. So perhaps create an employee persona, and then sort of take them down that entire journey, just like a marketer would take a customer journey.
Exactly. Exactly. One of the things I've spoken about for a while is we have customer journeys all the time. So why not have the same for your employees, particularly when they join? So have an employee journey through that initial life cycle, you know, when we attract them, how we onboard them, how we engage them with the brand that we've created. What are the things that we're doing around lifestyle, around wellness, around total reward, around learning, around opportunities? Because these days, for a lot of people, it's not just growing up. People don't mind moving sideways to learn new and different things. So we need to be crafting that. And then how do we market that internally to people? So they look at it and we know that people aligned with a great brand and people aligned with a great story are engaged. Engaged people apply discretionary effort. And that's how people become a competitive advantage and your businesses win in the market.
Very, very clear, Dominic. So Nisha, perhaps I'll bring you in there. You know, same question, but do you employ similar strategies, and how do you go about, you know, how did you go about traditional planning and sourcing? How is that changing, and how do you think it should be in the future?
I sometimes feel that, you know, planning, you know, as a word has gone through so many avatars. I still remember when I started my career, planning was, nobody talked about less than 10 years. Yeah. And then when I moved to IT, even 5 years, you know, felt unrealistic. And then 3 years is what, you know, sort of became a norm, right? So for any, like the business planning cycle was 3 years. And so similarly, manpower, we planned for 3 years and things like that. But now it's also real time. People are doing their annual business reviews, yes, but then you do your quarterly, and you know that you are readjusting your shaft as you're moving along, and so is planning. So I think workforce planning goes, you know, hand in hand with business planning. It's become more real time, and at the same time, skills. I think this overall emphasis, you know, that we have been laying, you know, with, and the expectation setting that we do with our people is upskilling. I think it's about making it clear what are the new age skills, what are the new directions, you know, that the business is taking, and how the organization provides equal opportunity for people to, really upgrade themselves. When e-commerce became big, or when now say Web3 is becoming big, through strategy meets and so on, I think the organization makes it pretty loud and clear as to where the next priorities are going to be. And likewise, HR has to be smart enough to understand, which, and as to, how do we prepare ourselves to bring in these skills of the future.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing from both of you is align more with the business and work a lot more in real time when it comes to workforce planning, and when it comes to sourcing, focus on creating an employer journey, creating employer personas, perhaps take them through the same cycle as you would, in marketing, take a customer through a customer journey. So I love that. And I think I'm going to move on to the next topic, and we'll keep talking about, of course, employer branding, planning strategy, etc. And the next topic, again, like I said in the introduction, very, very passionate about, very close to my heart, and I'm 100% sure as HR leaders, you think that this is very important as well, about offloading manual work using, the fourth industrial revolution is here. It has been here for a few years now, with things like cloud computing, IoT, especially robotic process automation, with organizations offloading a lot of their work to robots. And sometimes very annoyingly, right, as a customer, you feel very annoyed that, you're talking to a customer, to a robot rather than an individual. But we all know that it's going to happen and it is required, right? And the reason for it to happen is so that one of the biggest reasons, of course, cost saving is a reason, right? But you want to create more and more meaningful roles for the individuals working in your organization. So I'll bring you in there, Vinod, to comment on, and how can HR support with sort of moving individuals to more meaningful roles, while business focuses on things like cost saving and doing automation for cost saving. But is there a different reason why we should be doing automation and digitalization?
So thanks, Varun, and it was interesting to hear the perspective from the other two panelists. But my view on what you asked about static work or outdated manual work, if in my perspective, this talk was always there. Everybody spoke about it since I joined work, probably 20 years, 25 years, but all this gained speed. I just want to start with an incident in my life. It was 2019. I remember we debated, probably went on debating, should we create a work from home policy? There were lots of issues. Everybody talked about, no, we can't allow employees to go and work from home because of various reasons, productivity, I don't know whether they are working, etc., etc. There were a lot of reasons. Come March, I think 2 years back, around the same time, what happened? Everything happened in a day or two, probably. I don't know how soon the rest of the panelists had experienced it. For us, it was a day or two notice, and everybody started working from home. If you had a laptop, you work from home. Why am I saying this is that employees had no other option but to throw away outdated work, outdated processes. Employees themselves went ahead and started looking at what process doesn't suit me. Working from office, you could go to the printer, get printouts, etc. So it was a very employee-driven activity. It started gaining speed just to make sure that we are getting the work done, sort of thing. So employees started that process because they needed to complete their work. So the static and outdated models, everything was thrown out by the employees. Now, when the employers started feeling that, oh, that is quite interesting, employees can come up with so much of innovative ways to get the things done. If as an organization, we start to think about it, there is a bigger benefit. So that is where the organization, it is, I don't think it is just HR. I think it is everyone now across the organization. So I don't want to say that it should be an HR initiative. It is across the organization. And I think we should start making work meaningful. And for me, a very quick or a simplistic perspective of that is I would categorize work into three main categories. One is that repetitive work, which probably if we take a bit of extra effort, we can simply digitize it or automate it, whatever you want to call that, or use an app to make it happen. The second category of work is the one where there's a bit of repetitive work, but there is also a decision. If A happens, you need to click 1. If B happens, you need to click 2, but it is not very complicated. So the organization will start thinking about, can I separate this and take the first part, which is the repetitive, and digitize it? Or can I digitize the entire thing? So that's a conversation with the, what you call that, leading technologies coming in help. I think the second portion, a large portion of the second category of job is also, or can also be digitized. With new AI, new apps, new machine learning capabilities, etc. There is a third category, which is about human interaction. Probably this session, a session of this type, you can't just leave it to an AI to decide a session of this type. So that is the third category. Now, for me, that third category is where we as leaders need to think about, how do I make it more meaningful? The first two can be easily digitized, and that should be done very quickly. And the third portion, which is the thinking part, which is the cognitive use of the cognitive skills, I think we need to try and make it meaningful for the employees. That is the way I would say. So this will happen. It is going to continue fast. And only the top portion would remain, that thinking part of the job would remain going forward. That is my view.
Absolutely. And would love to hear one of the other panelists comment on, so if, let's say there's an organization of 20,000 people, right? And if the work of about 15,000 people is in the nature of repetitive, which requires decision-making, and the repetitive part can be automated. How do you create meaningful roles for those individuals? One, do you sort of repurpose them, upskill them, like Nisha was, mentioning in the first topic? Or what are the strategies that an HR leader, somebody listening to us today, can take to sort of create more meaningful roles for individuals in that first category? And of course, let's also talk briefly about second category later. Dom, I think you want to comment?
Yeah, so I mean, what the psychologists tell us about meaningful work is if we give people autonomy, mastery, and purpose in the workplace, they get the opportunity to design their jobs, then they're going to be engaged. The other one is what we call task identity. So you understand the outcome of why you're going to do something. So I know that some airlines, what they've done is engineers who don't do a very important job, maybe making an aeroplane engine, they've taken them to the airports and shown them as the planes take off, so they understand why they did their job and understand the meaningfulness of that. There was the experiments that was done in the US where they looked at hospital cleaners, and most infections happen in hospitals through cross-contamination. So what they did was they fed the data of how cross-contamination rates came down. And when the cleaners understood the purpose of stopping cross-contamination in the hospital, it halved. These are all ways of making work meaningful by giving people autonomy to make decisions, mastery and purpose, task identity, and being involved in the design of the work. But psychologists have been telling us this for 100 years. It's just we're still stuck in the Tayloristic time of the 1890s, which was designed for factories in the US. But it is possible if you can, if it's dirty, dull, and dangerous, automate it. But there are other jobs. Like, for example, I was watching a program where people were saying, you can automate chefs. You can't really. You can automate maybe the flipping of a steak. You can automate the chopping of carrots, but you can't automate the taste of food. So there will always be ways where people will have work that is meaningful, but it's how we design the job and it's how we communicate things to our people.
Absolutely. Nisha, would you like to add there in terms of how we can make some of this learning practical for, and how do you do it currently in terms of making it practical for, for your organization?
I think one is giving to Dominic's point. I think the more autonomy you give for people to not only perform in their existing roles, but also to pick their next role. If you have more enabling, more empowering processes like that, then of course the stickiness is there. That you can hold interest levels of people. Your retention can be better. And at the same time, you also show support. So, say for example, if any of us sales associate, look forward to becoming a store manager, one is he or she should have visibility onto these roles, which open up, and through an internal job posting process, he or she is able to look at these open positions GCC-wide. And at the same time, the person can also enroll himself or herself into, say, our advanced managers program, which enables them to, become good store managers and to be able to do their jobs once they take on those roles. So, as HR and as organizations, I think it's our responsibility to ensure that we have these policies and processes that empower people to take decisions on their, with regards to their career, I think which they will find more fulfilling as opposed to, we offering them, jobs, roles, training programs, and then they picking up from that.
Very clear. So, when I design, for example, for my organization, a competency framework, do you think there should be like besides leadership, technical and behavioral, competencies, should there also be a fourth competency pillar added, meaningfulness of the role, or would it add if it becomes a KPI for HR to create more meaningful roles for their organization? I don't mean that you have to add a KPI for everything, but does this have to come from the leadership of the organization in terms of making roles more meaningful?
Varun, sorry, can I just step in? Sorry.
Sure.
Varun, what I personally feel is that it is not HR. It is something which has to happen in the organization. And what I strongly feel is that managers should be trained to all those what Dominic and Nisha was talking about, creating meaningful work. Employees can create meaningful work, but to a certain extent, I think managers need to be trained to create meaningful work. Managers need to create those meaningful work to help the job autonomy or flexibility or whatever we want to call that. So all that it is also managed. We need to train managers to understand work is not no more work definition, it is work design. And that work design should help with all what Dominic and Nisha was talking about.
Very, very clear. So I think some great takeaways there. I think this leads us very well to the next topic of discussion around employee experience, right? How can HR go about? One is, of course, we've talked about employee journey, and one part of that employee journey is after they join the organization, right? So just like in a marketing funnel, when you first grow through interest, brand awareness, and then you finally buy. After you buy, it's very, very important, if you want the customer to buy again, to keep giving them a really great experience. Otherwise, they're going to leave your journey and join somebody else's customer journey. So what does, how can HR use this change, the future of work, which is happening now, to create a better employee experience, right? Using analytics, using network analytics is a great up and coming field around improving employee experience. What do you think organizations are doing in the region right now to improve employee experience? And where are the gaps? What else must they do? And any of the panelists can come in and then.
Sure. So if it's okay, I'll take this one. Unfortunately, there is something that is very old school that most businesses forget. So first of all, HR needs to be working with the business to work on, we used to call it mission, vision, whatever. A lot of the new companies now call them massive transformational purposes, why we want to go and do something. So for example, Google is organizing the world's data, creating a story. So when someone joins you, they're already kind of bought into the brand, but you're going to help them understand their purpose, their task identity in doing that. And I'm sure the two other panelists will agree with me here. There is one superpower we have, which we forget all the time, which is a fabulous onboarding and a fabulous induction, because that sets you up for success from day one, and that's managed by HR. We bring you into the organization. It should be extremely professional. And then whatever length of time, as I understand it, there are some companies out there, I think L'Oreal's one of them, I think they do a 3-month induction or a 6-month induction. I'm not saying that, but an induction that brings you into the organization and helps with your expectations. So now it's linking into what's expected of me. How will my performance be managed? There's another bit of research which was done by Wharton a few years ago. The most significant factor of success for a new employee, believe it or not, is meeting their line manager on the first day. So it's little things like this. It's about making sure the organization is ready for them. They're coming in, having whatever, technical training they may need, the equipment they need, the tools they need to do the job. Some organizations, they use guardian angels or whatever you want to call it, someone who's a buddy who's gonna work with them. But this is the way of bringing people into organization, and they'll be engaged with your story when they understand your story and it's explained to them. So this, again, to the previous point about is having good line managers. So whether people like this or not, the first line of good HR is the line manager. It's having trained and competent line managers in place, knowing what they're supposed to be doing. You can use a lot of, there's a lot of easy things you can do with tech. I've automated things, which is check-ins over the probation process. So we write to the employee to say, just to check, have you had your KPIs yet? Have you had this? And we write to the line manager at the same time. I've measured things like, not the level of training, but how inspired the employee felt over the first couple of weeks. That's a good measurement there. You can use check-ins on different apps for engagement, but there is still a very old school way of a really good onboarding program is going to bring someone into an organization and then complement that with tech in terms of checks and balances around performance management, around engagement. That's a really good way of engaging, of HR engaging new joiners into the business.
Interesting what Dom is telling. If the simple things even work now, though it is old-fashioned, traditional, etc., the simple things even work now. I agree with Dom completely. And we need to remember the importance of proper onboarding.
Sure. So purpose-driven, first, be a purpose-driven business, set up your MTP, your massive transformative purpose, and make sure it is communicated to your employees in a manner in your induction, during the onboarding, in such a manner that they are set up for success. And then what after, right? So once they start working within an organization, remember, I think organizations now are competing against a the huge competitor for talent which has come up is the gig economy, right? A lot of people, a lot of talented individuals want to be independent. Entrepreneurship is increasing considerably in most countries and in our region. And what, Nisha, perhaps, what can, using, of course, tech and or other more traditional forms, what can an HR leader do to improve the employee experience after the onboarding period?
So Varun, I'm a big believer of employee experience. If you ask me what's my one mantra at the place of work, I would say it's driving employee experience, because that's, if you get that right, which means you've got a lot of things right. And in fact, the many times the conversations I have with my team is really as a result of it, what's the employee experience that you have created, be it at the time of onboarding or even exit. I think it's and especially when people are in a foreign land, and they're trying to like do things, and say post movement or separation, they have like 10 other things to really manage, right? So in the end, as an HR person, what's the experience that you have delivered? Or in terms of how do you hold the business responsible, for an employee experience, that you may, you, according to the organization standards, you would want them to hold.
Absolutely. Great. I do want to move on to my next topic, but maybe I'll add, I think with technology, it's now really possible and a lot easier for organizations to create a personalized employee experience for each individual within the organization. Obviously, easier said than done. It is expensive technology, but I think I'm hoping that a lot of organizations in the region to retain talent actually sort of move to more using more technology and analytics to improve employee experience. I'm going to move to my next topic around designing an agile organization, and I'll bring Vinod in there. What sort of roles and structures should HR help, their CEOs create to create more agile organizations in this? I think Nisha mentioned a very important plan. I think a point around planning, 3-year plans. It's way too difficult to do now. I think even a quarterly plan sometimes is not long enough, right? How can HR leaders help organizations become more and more agile?
So I think we've been talking a lot during the last 20-30 minutes about work design. I think we need to think about work design, and HR can help in a lot of ways. And again, I don't want to repeat myself, but I think it is worth highlighting that the managers need to be equipped about work design. So if we start thinking about job autonomy, flexibility, etc., that is one part of it. And HR should also try and create processes around giving employees more freedom to decide, decide on problems, give them the freedom to think, freedom to act on the problems. I think more engagement needs to be created in the work, the way you design the work. You can't have a work which doesn't talk to the employee. I don't know how best to put it. It needs to talk to the employee's interest. And how does HR help? HR needs to train the managers. Again, I'm going back to the same old thing which I said. It is about training the managers to ensure that the work design takes care of what the employee wants and what the organization wants. They are in the best position to marry that, and HR can play a big role in that.
Absolutely. Should we move away from this concept as you grow in an organization? You have to become a people manager, and then you have to become a director of people. And is there room in organizations for people to progress in their careers as experts without managing a team and still feel empowered, still feel motivated, right?
Of course, yes, big yes. Actually, that's going to, you don't need, if there are 100 jobs, you don't need 100 managers. So that what you said is right. You still need experts moving around one path, and you don't need them to manage people. So what you said is right. You need to allow them to grow on their own path and have managers. So I think there's no question about it. It should continue with giving experts the right role. You don't need to be a manager.
Absolutely. And that sort of education to people in the organization and to employees in the organization, you don't need to be a manager of people to be more successful or to be
growing an organization,
or to be to be a leader, right?
Varun, if I may add, to an extent, I think the IT world, in the late 90s, IT really revolutionized, careers, career tracks, and everything, and what the pyramid looked like, and the flat pyramid. I think one of the things that it really brought alive was it was not necessary that only managerial roles were the senior most roles in the organization. So if you know, programmer as a role was always is at the bottom of the pyramid, but over the years that role also moved to the mid management level, and also it was one of the senior most individual contributing roles. If you were a programmer in a very, very large account that possibly needed that skill, you could be managing the account and still be a programmer and be into an individual contributor role. Yeah. So yes, I think some of those myths, were broken in the past, and a lot of technology linked roles, or individual contributor roles really came to the forefront, and it really, that myth was bursted big time, that it was only managerial roles or people managing roles that became the most senior in organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think people should move away from, taking pride in managing a large team. Of course, there is pride in managing a large team as a manager, but if you're not a good manager who cannot create a good employee experience for your organization, I think organizations certainly should take advantage of this sort of emerging tech around analytics, etc., to find who's a good manager and who's just a good senior expert that you want to retain in an organization.
Yeah.
Perfect. I do need to sort of quickly move on to the last topic and round this off. I think this has been a very rich discussion so far, and I want to round this off. What is the future of HR departments with all of these things that we've talked about, right? Change in employee experience, creating a purpose within the organization, creating more meaningful roles in the organization. What is the future of an HR department and an HR leader? What does the HR department of the future looks like? And perhaps in about 60 seconds, I'll ask each of you, whoever would like to go first, perhaps, can round that off for us. What is the future of the HR department in your view? Maybe.
Sure. If I could go.
Yeah.
There are going to be 4 key areas for me. We know things are going to be automated. We know paper will disappear, which I can't wait for. Absolutely fantastic. So that's going to leave us focusing on areas that will support the business around talent, culture, and capability. So the first one is, as I spoke before, about brand, creating an amazing brand and a culture that fits in there, the story, engaging people, creating performance management systems that are meaningful. So we can automate this. This is about weekly check-ins. This is about updating people, course correcting, using strength-based feedback, identifying your talent quicker, developing training courses, delivering them through things like Udemy and things very, very quickly. The next thing is about us managing communication. So we know stories shape culture. We should be managing an internal platform which celebrates success, allows for two-way communication, allows for innovation, sharing ideas, available on any device at any time. And the final one is, we won't call it data, let's call it evidence-based practice. So we have data in the organization. We know the latest thinking around people, and we know what some of the best companies are doing. We should be looking at all these things and coming back to the business and saying, we should be doing this based on X, Y, and Z, rather than how we feel about something, or we think we know that's the course forward. These are the 4 key areas: brand, performance management, communications, and data. That for me is the future of HR.
Brilliant. Vinod, would you like to go next according to future of HR?
Yeah, for me, and that is one of my wish list also. I think HR will be liberated with from admin roles. There would not be any HR admin will not be there at all. I think the technology will take over and help us with all the admin work. The other point I would like to drive is there will be more predictive analytics, and that is what we are going to see. So most of the HR decisions will be based on predictive analytics. So that's the second thing which I see. The third thing would be there might be different ways of working, more and more different ways of working. Right now, we are talking about 5-day working, etc. I think it will go down to 4. There might be job sharing in a big way. There might be part-time work in a big way. So things would change. And I think HR needs to remember that new work style will be relevant as we go forward.
That sounds brilliant. So HR Minority Report. So prediction in HR. Perfect. Right. Nisha, 60 seconds on future of HR department and HR leaders.
So I think it's a real exciting time for the function, I should say. I still can't, imagine continuing to do some of the routine work that I did in the past, thanks to all the automation. I have used AI for employee engagement in my past organization, and it worked beautifully. The moment I came into, on my desk into the workplace, I knew exactly which manager to go and speak to because I have the dashboard ready in terms of where the engagement has dipped on the previous day and what's really happened there. So I think if you look at all the new age practices that are coming, I think they're only making the workplace more and more exciting for our function.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think HR roles of HR leaders and HR departments are going to become really, really exciting in this new era of work. I think, like I said, this is civilization 2.0 already, I think, and HR is going to play a key role in helping all of us do more meaningful work and produce more meaningful outputs in our lives. And I thank all the 3 HR practitioners who are here today for actually being at the forefront of doing that already. And I hope you all continue to encourage this region to be in the forefront of HR and lead it into the future. So thanks so much to all 3 of you.
Thank you, Varun.
Thanks, Varun.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much to all our panelists for such an engaging and inspiring discussion. And thank you, Varun, for moderating it so well. There was so much to learn from each one of you about the future of work, what it would look like, especially as we continue working in a hybrid work environment, how tech will transform work in the workplace, the role employee experience and data will play in it, and how the role of the HR function and HR leader will evolve in the new era of work. Indeed, the future of work is already happening now. So once again, thank you to all our panelists for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that concludes this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Coming up next is a keynote on design thinking at the heart of digital transformation by Clinton Wingrove, CEO and Principal Consultant, Clinton HR. See you on the other side, everyone. Thank you.